Don't know how
That's
helpful
nice.
it is, but anyway.
It's really good. I love it.
We are here. Welcome to anyone listening, watching, joining. We do record these. We have been recording them. They do live on YouTube at the moment. I have been putting them on there with an easy link to go and watch. Obviously, you can watch them in double time, which is sometimes easier to get through things a bit quicker. You can skip to parts, but yeah, whatever we talk about, we try to share there, so that anyone can go back and watch this stuff later in case you missed something. We definitely love live questions. It is super helpful because our goal is to be, covering topics and covering things that, you want to hear about, that you want to know about, anything like that. So please share your questions, your comments. That will help guide us on what you want to hear about. But yeah, how was everyone's week? You guys had a good week? You were a bit unwell, Joanne, which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I'm getting over a head cold, but
tiny violin for you.
I know, the little tiniest violin in the world. No, I'm on the mend. I'm doing fine. Just on a personal note, I'm sort of auditioning for an all French singing gig for like 3 weeks from now. I sing a couple songs in French. I speak French like very intermediately.
Okay.
Would you like to do a private gig where you're singing 3 hours of French songs? And I'm like, yeah, I could probably get that together. Let's see. So we'll see.
Wow.
Support the numbers for me.
Okay. When you sing in French, do you know what all the lyrics mean, or are you kind of just singing what you know the sounds to be?
I'll usually look up the meanings, like online, so I can really understand the song when I'm singing it. But I speak it okay, thanks to Duolingo as well. I'm on my 601 day streak right now.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Shout out to the Duolingo designers for their exceptional gamification.
Yeah, it's true.
Joanne Weaver in.
It's true.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's been fun.
And how about you, Erica? Good week. Midnight was away.
Midnight is away. Yeah, my dog. He is at training camp until next Tuesday. So it's been nice. It's been weird not having him here, but hopefully he comes back perfect. Probably not, but
perfect.
Better.
There's such a thing.
He's really smart. So I get all my like pup dates, every other day, and it sounds like he's having a good time. So hopefully
I have noticed. I don't own a dog. I don't own a pet. I had a fish one time, but all pet owners say how smart their pet is. Not to say yours isn't and Midnight isn't, but all pet owners say their pet is smart.
But he is part German Shepherd, and so
he does strike me as a breed that is typically a bit smarter than the usual.
Yes.
Baseline of smartness for dogs.
Listen, I have Golden Retriever at home who's not the sharpest.
Really? They're usually kind of smart.
There's a lot of videos on them being funny and not smart.
I think poodles are like as smart as like a 4-year-old child. Like poodles are like poodles and crows.
That's my current reading level. So me and poodles.
Doggy daytime, reading time for you guys. That'd be great.
Perfect. That's what makes me a great recruiter. 4-year-old
literacy. It goes hand in hand.
Just look at shirts.
Yeah, basically, right? That's what design is, right? No. Let's dive into it. Let's talk about some stuff. Again, questions, fire them at us. But in the meantime, we have been seeing and receiving a few topics around interviews. Once you do get that interview, what you dive into, how you could prep for it. I think one thing that we can probably shed a lot of light on is like common feedback we get from whether it's a design manager or whoever's on that hiring side, common feedback that we get from them as to why someone isn't progressing. And fortunately for us, we get to see it across many different companies from many different leaders and different decision makers. And we get to see like what are usual reasons why someone is not progressed through and why. So I think that's something really helpful that we can share and then ways that maybe might help you make the most of that interview. Because I think at the end of the day, right, an interview is there to, progress or not. And there's going to be times that you're just not the right person for the role. And that's what the interview is there to tease out. And vice versa, you might determine through that interview that they're just not the company for you, but you had to get in there to kind of learn a bit about that. So it can totally go either way. But if you want it to go forward, you want the best shot of it going forward, and you want to put your best foot forward. And there's always little things that I think you can do that help with that. So maybe you guys could share maybe something that you've heard as like a trend as to why people don't progress. I don't know if something comes to mind immediately, like a common piece of feedback you get or hear.
I can go first.
Please.
I would say the most common thing is typically around like just being unclear in your storytelling. And I think losing people when you're presenting a case study, not being concise enough, maybe running over time, not looking at the clock. I get that a lot. Like there's time management skills, running over because everyone's kind of like at this one meeting. But yeah, I would say that's probably my number one.
I've definitely heard that one before too. Yeah,
for sure. And I think storytelling is so important as, a UX product designer, right? Because that's like the kind of design that you're doing. How do you tell a story? Like, how do you get people through the process or through the product or through the platform, right? So I think that's just really super key. I totally agree with that.
One way to certainly overcome. So this is typically, we would see this in like a portfolio presentation round, right? You're through maybe connecting with several people at a time. You're presenting your work and you're telling a story of the work that you did to bring them into the mix, behind the scenes, everything like that of the work that you did to try and convey your experience and your expertise. So we see that round pretty common for most product design roles. It's probably one of the more common sort of stages. One super easy way to prep for that is like time yourself with your presentation. Rehearse it. Like literally rehearse what you're presenting. And don't use your first couple of interviews as your trial round to work on it. I've definitely had that before where people have said, oh, yeah, I don't think I went too well, but I've learned a lot on how to present it. It's like, maybe you should have practiced first before getting in there. That's now you've missed out on that particular role. So
practice with your 4-year-old, your poodle, your golden retriever. They'll get it. They'll get it.
I also think, practice with like someone, like a friend, or often parents don't really understand what designers do. I know my parents had no idea, still don't. But I would say, just try to make it sound as basic as you can, but still like informative to people who are not designers. So like you may be presenting to a CEO who needs this first design hire and they don't really understand like all of the value of design, right? Or in a panel round, there might be designers there, but there might be an engineer or like someone else completely. So making sure that everybody can understand what you're talking about is really important. So I think you can also use flashcards, honestly. I'm a flashcard user. I think a lot of people think they have to memorize everything. And it's like totally okay to come prepared, to take notes, to write down things, to breathe and pause.
I think a big part of the reason why people are not concise in interviews, especially when they're doing presentations, is that they get nervous. Right? Especially if you've like gone on lots of interviews and they haven't amounted to anything, or like maybe you like almost got the offer but you didn't. I think there's just a lot of frustration and a lot of fear around like, oh God, am I not going to get this one too? So I think just, I think practicing like, techniques about how to get really centered, just making sure that you're not rambling. I mean, I know for myself, if I get nervous, I'm just like, I can just talk until the cows come home. But what you really want to be doing is just making sure that I think flashcards are great, bullet points. Like, what are the main things you want to talk about? Setting it up with that context first. So instead of just diving into the story, like, here's what we did, but it's like, frame it first. Like, bring people along on the ride with you. Like, what was this project? Why did it exist? What pain point was it filling? Who did you work with on it? Right. So to kind of like give that backstory so people are like, okay, they're along on the ride with you. And then when you're also telling your story, another piece of feedback that I get from clients pretty often is balancing the we versus the I. So like, what did I do on the project? Because they want to know like what you can do. They're hiring an individual, so they want to know what you can do. So it's important to make sure that you're including what you did. So a lot of clients will be like, oh, it was a great presentation, but I still don't know what this person did. But then but it's also important to also balance the we, because you want to show that you're collaborative and that you can work with, cross-functional stakeholders. You can work with product, you can work with developers, you can work with an outside client well, if that's the kind of situation that you're in. So I think just making sure that those stories weave a good kind of percentage of those things in as you're talking is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I always say to people coming into those rounds, like, know your audience. Most companies are pretty good at sharing who will be in the interview. I've certainly had companies that don't, which to me is a red flag. But you should know who you're going to be meeting with and speaking with. And based on that, know your audience, because, if they're product, if they're engineering, you need to know, like, I'm not just speaking to a designer. I'm not just sharing my work and speaking design language. How do you present your work, in your previous roles, to product and to engineering, to your cross-functional partners? You speak their language at times. You speak different languages. So if you go into presenting your work and you only speak design, you're not acknowledging your audience and how you might communicate with them. And that's part of your role. I think some of the best teams that I've worked with on the other side, they're really good at making people feel welcome. And that I love in a team, in a panel, in a company, when they acknowledge this can be a little bit nerve-wracking. This can be a little bit of like a process. It's, it's 5 of us and 1 of you, and they'll do what they can to make you feel welcome, to help you feel calm, to help you feel safe to just dive in, and they'll prompt and guide you as needed to make sure they make the most of the hour. When I see teams that work that way, I think that's a level up. That really is it. And that should be a signal to you as the interviewee, like, this is a team that gets it and cares and understands, versus this is 5 people that don't necessarily want to be here right now, that are just going through the motions. You got to, I don't know. I factor those things in too. That's that two-way street. Absolutely. Look for those indirect signals.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I agree with everything you just said. And I also think that, especially in one-on-one interviews, like if you're doing like a round 1, you're meeting the hiring manager, maybe like the recruiter screen is first. I think just, creating space to also like be a good hostee, like we were just talking about was like the company being a good host, but also like, you're being invited into this process to really show like respect and interest in the other person too, right? So I mean, this is like table stake stuff, but I think it begs to be mentioned, is just, look the person up on LinkedIn, know about their background. Maybe there's something kind of interesting and something that you're like, oh, you used to be on the synchronized swimming team at your college. Like, how do you hold your breath that long? Or just like, or whatever. It's something kind of fun. And they'll probably really appreciate the fact that like,
it makes a difference.
I'm being asked about something about myself. We can kind of maybe forget about work for just a second, but you're making it personal and you're really taking the time to connect with that person. So I think that's asking the other person questions, getting them, kind of drawing them out, creating, you want to make sure you're sharing as much of yourself as you can too. But like, what was it? There's like a Maya Angelou quote that's maybe hers or maybe not, but it's like, people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. Yeah. Right? Yep. It's like if you're making them feel really good and like appreciated, like, hey, you're a human and I'm really and another thing too is like, I'm not just interviewing for any role I can desperately get my hands on, but like, I want to work at your company. Yeah. And I want to work in this role. And here's the specific reasons why.
That's awesome. These kinds of tips really fall into a category of like variables that you can control, I think. You have the ability to look up who you're meeting with. You can control some of these variables. You can't control whether you actually have the experience or not for the job, or the technical skills that maybe they truly need. There are things outside of certain control, but some of these things, like looking someone up and learning a bit about them and making a comment about some of their background that could bridge a gap, that's all within, like, anyone can do that. Anyone, you don't need a special set of skills for that. You're able to do that. Which reminds me a bit of what you had said during the week, Erica, of knowing a bit more about the company and tying what you're presenting to what they do. Yes. As well, from a design perspective. I'd love to hear a bit more about, what you meant by that as well, Erica.
What did I mean by that? So sorry. I think what it is you have the ability to sort of respond with a question, answering a question with a question is not taboo, really. It's really just to like firmly understand what they are wanting you to answer and how.
Sure.
So kind of like redirecting the answer, your answer, to like how you want to answer it, right? I think the point, I had spoken to a design leader, they had sort of said, listen, people often just like get really wrapped up talking about me, like all about themselves. And because it's hard, again, like you're flustered, you're nervous, maybe something happened that morning, it's throwing you off, even though you've practiced like all week or you know it inside out. But I think you can sort of ask questions like, what exactly is the hole you're trying to fill here with this hire? Is it a specific type of, I don't know, process flow, like feature that you're struggling with, or kind of just like ask them more a little bit about what it is that you would be doing there, right? It's hard because sometimes it could be like more of a generalist interview, but I think you need to sort of come back in with exactly like how you've done that in the past and how you can help them with that for this role specifically, versus just like, speaking about everything you've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even saying like, once you find out those things that they're looking for, you can craft your story based on what they're looking for, right? So you're like, okay, ding, ding, ding. I know they're looking for these 3 things. How can I address these things? How could I help? And maybe even saying things like, hey, I think I can help, or this sort of work feels relevant to, Pinterest, let's just say, because of this and this and this, right? So it's like, oh, they're actually like taking into account specifically like what's going on in this job and how they can be a match. Like you're connecting the dots for them, which I think a lot of people going in this are like, oh, I'll just kind of like, splat my experience all over the wall and they can just like figure out like what I do and how it fits. But like connecting the dots and telling that story and like kind of spoon feeding them, like how you can be a help to them specifically, I think is just really smart. And it also just paints you as somebody just, seasoned who can address, needs and just be a good communicator.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that comes down to a little bit of research that you can do on your own about that company, looking at their product. If you're in a portfolio presentation round, it's highly likely you've met them once, maybe twice already. That's usually not the first round with the company. So you've got some context, and picking and choosing from your background and from your experience, you've only got maybe an hour together, and you're only presenting 2, maybe 3 case studies typically. Of all the work that you've done and all the things that you've got to pull from, something maybe is more relevant than something else. Start with that, lead with that, be adjacent, be relevant, be on point. It's not just only presenting certain things. So trying to determine that can really help. Some companies are really good at giving you a bit of a prompt on what they want to know about you. Hey, we're an early stage company. Our challenges are really going from 0 to 1, iterating quick. We test and iterate versus a lot of time with research, whatever it might be. So you might think, okay, well, I've worked in startups, before. I've done 0 to 1. I'm going to focus on presenting a case study that speaks to that, to give them confidence that that's something that I can do. Yeah. And that is a better use of that time together versus presenting things that maybe don't speak to their challenges that they're having at the moment. So, yeah, I think companies really do indirectly guide you in many ways on what they want to know about. But it's always fair and fine and free to ask, hey, is there something specific you'd want me to present on? Is there a specific piece of work the team might want to know about for me to present? It's always a great question. I've had it before from designers, and then I've had that panel come back and say, oh, we're actually going to be really curious about the work they did here. Great, done. That's what they'll talk about. Yeah. Now we just made the best use of this hour together. So again, all variables within your control as the interviewer to better your chances and better the opportunity of moving forward. Like anytime you can stack the odds in your favor, why wouldn't you? By doing a bit of prep, by doing a bit of research, by just trying to shift the scales that little bit. I think it just really gives you the better chance. It's not cheating. It's not rigging the system in some way. It's just basic preparation and a bit of basic research, I really think.
Yeah, well, they're filling the hole that's there, right? So it's like they're showing how they're filling the hole. And here's the thing too, is that the company wants you to do well. Like they're taking the time out of their day, like maybe it's multiple people, if it's a panel round, like they want you, like they're all rooting for you. Like they want to hire someone, and why not you? So I think that's just an important mindset to get into too, of like, hey, like everybody wants me to do well. You've done your research, like you've, filled out how to plug the holes and like what you need to say. I think all of this stuff can go out the window if you're nervous. One of the things I wanted to also bring up today too, just in terms of like, so I'm a performer on the side. And so, performing and getting on stage in front of a lot of people is really no different than getting in front of a bunch of people on Zoom for a panel presentation, right? Like you're on, you have to perform, you have to express yourself in a certain way that's going to land and connect with the audience. One of the things that an old vocal coach of mine gave some advice years ago, just to fight those nerves before you're on, is not to think of like, I'm going to get judged, like, oh, I'm going to say the wrong thing, like not to get stuck in that negative mindset, but rather to think about like, oh, the reason why I'm feeling nervous is because I'm about to give a lot of myself. I'm about to give the gift of me to these people, which is it's an energy expenditure, right? So I think just thinking about it in the terms of like, I am a unique human being with this unique skill set. They liked me enough to get me into this round that I'm in now. Like I'm sharing what I've done and who I am and the gift of who I am to this company. And, not like in a cocky way, like, oh, they should be so lucky, to have me, but just, right. But like to really, remember that you have gifts and remember that you're valuable. I think that's just, that really helps me to kind of get over my, oh gosh, I'm up on the, I'm getting the arrows stuck in me, like, San Sebastian, but it's like, no, it's like you can, like you're bringing something really.
To do it.
Yeah.
I love that. Another piece of really common feedback I've had from people not progressing in rounds is something along the lines of like, oh, they weren't really able to go deep enough for us
I get that too.
On their work. They couldn't really elaborate or give us the right depth of an answer to things we wanted to know about. And this is particular, I think, for many design areas, but very particular for product design and product thinking. So much of what you do has some sort of scientific method before it. Every design decision you make should be informed. That's what you're hired for. And so I think companies, when they're looking for that product designer, they want to know like, well, why did you do this? Or why was that done? And sort of simply saying like, oh, that's what we were told to do. It's not always like enough of an answer. It doesn't really show the rigor in your thinking. That's another word I've heard over the years as well. Like, oh, we really want to see the rigor in their thinking. I bet it sounds like you've heard that feedback before too from companies. It's a classic.
Definitely heard it.
Yeah.
Haven't heard the rigor though.
Felt it. Yeah.
Being able to like show how research and data is actually driving your decisions. I feel like data is such a buzzword now, but it's huge. I mean, it's really important, right? Like you don't want to be creating something in a vacuum. Why did you create this thing? And then also on the flip side of that, if it did launch and you iterated on it, what were the successes? Clients love metrics. They love numbers because they can wrap their head around it. It makes sense. It's tangible. So, I think I mentioned this in a previous Design Unfiltered where I'm like, oh, they're kind of BS sometimes. Like, can you really say like, oh, my work created a, 75% retention rate. But if that's what happened and you were part of the project, I think it's safe to say that like you did contribute to it. The clients want to see not only that you are, or companies don't want to always just see like, oh, you're user focused. What's the impact on the user? But what's the impact on the business?
Yeah.
Like, especially in this industry when, kind of the industry is tight. The tech industry isn't doing super great. Like they're going to want to know like, what can you do for us? How can you build our business? How can you make us money or save us money? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, big time. And look, there's going to be a lot of designers out there, especially in the last couple of years, especially in the last year, I would say that when it comes to the impact of what they've done, they may feel they can't comment on it as heavily because we've seen so many projects get cut. We've seen, layoffs across the board and people were mid project, mid execution, whatever it might have been. And they're sort of saying, well, I can't really speak to where it went because, you know, we didn't get to launch it. We did launch it, but then I was let go, or, you know, whatever the reason might be. And they might not feel they have that. But there are a lot of things that you can share in lieu of like hard and fast data or metrics. Like, you should have an idea of what something is going to do. You should have an idea through some sort of research about what the impact is going to be. So maybe you don't know that it got 75% increase in retention, but you did something up front that informed you that making a change was going to increase retention in some way. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made the changes or gone down the path. Like, I think companies want to know that you as the designer, you make informed decisions, and you can go a bit deeper and you can really back up things. That's the other thing, I guess, defending decisions, defending design. That would be another piece of feedback that I get in briefs from companies saying, we want a designer that can defend their decisions. So how do you do that? You know, you have to have there's got to be some reason why you're doing the design that you're doing. There's some reason why you're doing what you're working on, or making those decisions. And that to me is the difference between a junior and a mid and a senior and a staff. They should be able to really defend things properly, or give me a structured quality answer as to why they made a decision versus, oh, don't know, we just did it. So that's, you know, really?
Yeah, and especially product people are going to want to know the data, right? Like,
there's something there. There was some reason that you did something. So they would be really common things that I've heard, you know, over the years, and certainly including recently, as to reasons why people haven't progressed in interviews.
I have a sad story to share for another reason.
Oh, okay. It's not about midnight, is it?
No, I don't know midnight yet, actually.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon. I'd love to be introduced. But I had a candidate last week who was going in for a role. It was around one. Beautiful portfolio. Great guy. Really good fit. It was a really hard to fit role too. And I think everything about his background was good, but just his he didn't show enough enthusiasm. Oops, sorry, phone's ringing.
Didn't
have enough enthusiasm for, or didn't show it. He did actually have enthusiasm. That was what was so tragic about it, is that he was super interested in it, super engaged. He would write me right away about things, like he was so in it to win it, but he just didn't get that across properly to the company. So I think, especially in this market where it's a company driven market, you know, you are interviewing, like there's more, I hate to put it this way, like there's more competition, but let's just say that it's a candidate rich market.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of have to go above and beyond to like get the company's attention and, you know, wanting to respond to you. So I think even if it might feel awkward, I think it's important to say, like, I'm really interested in your company and or this role. Because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Like maybe give one or two compelling reasons that are really honest and authentic for you. And look, I know that it can feel a little bullshitty, because especially if it's a round one interview, like you don't maybe know if you want to work there yet, right? Like they have to prove it to you as well. But I think for you to have the best chances of going forward, I think just literally saying it, like why you're interested, express your interest, write thank you notes after your interviews. So important.
I was going to ask you about that. You don't
like thank you notes?
I don't mind them. I mean, great, that's lovely, but I lump them into like cover letter category almost.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do they mean anything? Does it matter?
My old schoolness, but I think they are so crucial. And our clients tend to really respond well to them. Like we don't hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll say like, oh, I think it's another opportunity for a touch point. It's not just thank you for the interview, goodbye. It's like, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you considering me. Another opportunity to express your interest and the reasons why. And then I think it's another opportunity. I think something that sort of colors this whole thing is that just getting really personalized.
Yeah.
So we were talking about before, like researching the person on LinkedIn, researching the company, but to even like, if you drop just like one or two things that you talked about in the interview that were maybe like, it was like a personal thing that you connected on, or maybe it was like something specific that really like, resounded with you. And it shows that you're an individual. Like you're not just papering like the whole, like you're not just papering the whole industry with this like stock chat GPT generated thank you note, but it's like, I'm a real person. I'm really interested in you. Here's another point of connection. It's just another opportunity.
You know what? That's you've sold me.
Okay, all right, good. Viva la thank you note.
Yeah. What about like sending a thank you note directly versus through a recruiter if they're working with a recruiter? How do you feel about that?
Most of the time they don't always. The ones I've been, a lot of chats I've set up recently, they don't have the company's direct email sometimes. So I just let them know, just send to me and I'll forward it on.
Okay. We give the clients, the interviewers emails to the candidates, but we say like, hey, this is the only time you have direct communication with them.
Yeah.
Make sure you send it within 2 hours after the interview for maximum impact. So the momentum is going.
Yeah.
But everything else goes through us as a third party recruiter.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's fair enough. Yeah. Cause I mean, you know, you never want to be in a situation where unfortunately maybe that person doesn't get selected and then they're kind of reaching out to that interviewer and saying, hey, I thought I sent a thank you note. Why don't you want to hire me? You don't want to sort of end up in something like that. But that's our job, to try to discourage people to be that way or put those people forward to roles.
Yeah, but I think also if you are interviewing not through a recruiter, but you're interviewing directly, I think another thing too that people might feel a little shy about is following up.
Yeah.
I get this from a lot of candidates. I'm sure you guys do too, of like, hey, I haven't heard from this company. Like maybe they ghosted me, or maybe I just, it's been a week. Like, I'm sort of on pins and needles. I really want this job. I think this was like a really big mind shift for me, just in like my own career too. But following up is not pestering somebody. I mean, it can get pestering, like don't do it too much. But if it's been like, 5 business days or like a week after your interview and you're like, hey, like I'd like to know where I stand. I think just writing a quick little, very friendly note, not accusing anybody of anything, but just like, hey, like just thought I'd check in,
nudge.
see how the process is going, like, how did I do? Just something like personal, like, I'd love to hear any feedback that you might have, like to be open to feedback and just show that you're really interested and engaged. Because sometimes people just might lose you. Like they might just lose you in the process. Like there might be a lot of people applying. That also goes for just applying to companies too. Like even if you haven't been interviewing, but just like, following up and like, hey, just, bubble your stuff up, send your resume again as an attachment or as a link. Don't make them go hunt for your stuff. Just make everything super easy and digestible for them to respond to you.
Yeah, I love that.
It also depends on like your other interviews. You could also kind of maybe allude to the fact that you have some other things moving along, and it's a very delicate way of doing it, but don't like pressure them. I need an answer by today. But I would just sort of, even if it's not completely true sometimes, like just to sort of get something moving. Hopefully they do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if companies are fully aware sometimes of how much hiring momentum and hiring velocity works in their favor when it comes to actually having someone accept an offer. A company that moves really efficiently through their interview process, that follows up, that does what they say they were going to do. When it comes to the offer and the person receiving that, they are in a far better place to really, truly consider that company, that offer. I think that they're in a far better place mentally to go down that path versus a challenging interview process, drawn out, delays. Oh, sorry, we're pushing it back, this, that. When that all goes on and then it finally comes to the offer, that candidate 9 times out of 10, I really think they're in a different place when it comes to receiving that offer. Hopefully, I want any company that's making an offer to someone, I would love for them to win the talent that they want. And same for a designer or a candidate, I want them to win the role that they want. But, there's not a reward for bad behavior either, in that if you are interviewing really poorly and you're going through these motions badly, it's way harder to get it over the line in the end. And I see that time and time again. And that on the other side, most of the time is such a controllable variable for a company. They can control the interview efficiency. They can control that interview velocity. They can control that experience to an extent, the best of their abilities for that designer, so that if they want to hire them in the end, they have created such a positive experience that they have increased their chances so much more to having someone accept their offer. And if you want to offer someone, it means you want them to work for you, which means you want them to say yes. So tell me a story when you want to decrease your chances of someone saying yes. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So you, of course, want that process to be well done, good efficiency, good velocity. And some of these follow-ups and this back and forth communication hopefully just helps these things go smoothly. But it's very telling of like both sides, both designer and company, how they go about these things and how they might work together. So if the goal is hiring great people, then we've really got to do a great job of doing it.
And I think like people can really ask during their interviews, like what is the process, or when can I expect to, because when you like end the interview and then you're just left to emailing or messaging or whatever, tweeting something else. But if you're just left to that, then you have no direct conversation. So you can't even like really read their faces. So like I would say after the end of every meeting, or whether it's a recruiter or hiring manager, like, you know, when, like, how urgent is this role? Or like, do you have a lot of, I don't know, I don't see why it's a problem to ask, like, do you have a lot of people in process? Like how, or does anything about today and anything I said give you pause about my candidates for this role? You know, kind of ask them directly, throw them off a little bit too. It's like totally allowed. And I think we can talk about like the two-way interview street, right? Like you need to come like really prepared with interview or questions for them, and like about the team, the struggles they're having. You know, is this a backfill? Oh my gosh, is this a new role? Like, what is the growth trajectory look like for me? Like, you know, and tell me about the culture. What's your favorite part about working here? Why are you here still? Kind of. Or what are the challenges you've been having as like an organization too? And I think that will be really telling. You got to use your time wisely.
It's, again, you should be empowered as any person out there interviewing to have these conversations. In any company that you meet with, hopefully you've got like a point person that you're communicating with. It could be us, right? If you're working with, if you are fortunate enough to work with one of us, just kidding. We love to work with everyone. If you are working with a recruiter, great. That's your point person. Maybe it's an internal recruiter at the company, your point person. Maybe they're smaller and it's someone else within the biz, but there's some sort of point person that you're dealing with. Communicate with them and ask these questions. I always find myself in these situations where you go through this interview process. Companies can sometimes arrive at who they want to hire before the designer does. The company already knows what they're looking for. They know what they want. They've met someone. They're like, that's the designer that we want. But for that designer, they're like, I've had 2 conversations with them. I don't know that much about them. I would need to know this. I need to know that. So just because the company's in a place to make an offer doesn't mean that the designer is in a place to say yes to what that offer might be. They need more information to know whether they want to accept or not. So as you progress through an interview process, work with your point person and share back, what are the things you're not knowing yet? What are the things you'd want to know when it would come to an offer? It's not just about the dollars either, but like, where do they see me in the role? Like, which team might I be working with? And you know, are they able to tell me a few of the initiatives that I might be taking on sort of first? This type of information, which empowers you to make a decision, you should be able to have that conversation, because your point person, whether it's us, the internal recruiter, they're going to feed it back to the head of design or someone like that. They're going to say, hey, you've got a call coming up with that designer you really like. That designer is really wanting to know what they're going to be working on. Can you make sure you cover that?
Yeah,
in
tee
that
it
call
up.
that's coming up. Tee it up. You know, give them the pass.
Yeah.
So please be empowered to do that.
Yeah. I think my take on asking questions to a company is that I think in a first round interview, it's mostly you selling yourself to the company. Right. So I think like the hard hitting questions, things that might kind of put them on their back foot a little bit, that are not, you know, unwise to ask, but maybe if it's like a startup, like, what is their funding if it's not readily available on Crunchbase, or like what's their runway, like those sorts of like financial questions you probably want to wait until the end.
Yeah.
But I think having like a couple of specific questions, what team would I be on, what's the need, maybe some very specific questions about the company that you've researched. So I would say probably I would avoid like super generic questions like, what's your culture like? But I'd have really specific questions about that particular company. So it shows you've done your homework on them, you're interested and engaged, and you're curious enough in them that you're asking questions. But I'd probably advise people to not have too many questions for the first round, just because you're selling yourself, right? Like, make them want to bring you back for round 2 and round 3. And then I think there's like just naturally more space for you to ask more questions as things progress. That's my take.
Yeah. A question about a company's funding and run rate is kind of null and void if you're not coming back for round 2.
Right.
If you don't even make it past the first,
right.
It doesn't really matter what their funding is, because you're not coming back for our next round. So you sort of got to know when to stage it out a bit. Corey has made a really killer comment here, killer in a good way.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, Corey. Yeah. I'm gonna put it on the screen here somewhere, because I think this is really great. My 2 fave interview questions are why this role and why now. Very killer. To get at why the role exists, and also the answer may give insight into where design sits in their priority, and how do you make product decisions to tease out their maturity, research priority, etc., as well as a role of CEO or leadership. Thank you, Corey. That's awesome. Yeah, those are really great questions. These are probably not first round questions. Maybe the first question, why this role and why now? But your question about product decisions, where would that fall, do you think, in an interview process? That's probably in your portfolio presentation round as you're discussing things, maybe on a one-on-one in a second round with the head of design or someone similar.
I think probably second round.
Yeah.
Like more of like a one-on-one question.
Yeah. Again, knowing the audience and knowing who to ask these type, asking the internal talent person on the first round, how do you make product decisions, is probably not the best use for your 30 minutes with them. But that is such a great question for someone that would ideally know truly the answer to a question like that. How do you make product decisions?
Yeah. And if more people have more favorite questions that you guys like to ask, please put it in the chat too, because we can just knowledge share as well. Like it might be, I'll probably learn something too, like questions that I hadn't thought of before. So this is a great opportunity for the brain trust to come together.
Yeah.
I'm also saying that
hard. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What were you going to say, Erica?
I was just going to say, add like some questions that maybe have stumped you. Things that you are weren't sure how to answer, thought you answered right, probably didn't. I don't know, just anything confusing in the process for you guys.
Yeah. I'm also saying that Peter Paul de Pasquale wrote in earlier. So hi, Peter. You're a career counselor in higher ed. What special considerations would you give to designers leaving undergrad and grad design programs during this time? What can they do in this market to move forward? I think all the stuff that we've shared so far certainly applies to them as well. I would say specifically for people that are just graduating, I think it's really important that in portfolios you label what is schoolwork or spec work versus what is actually like, professional work. If you don't label it, I think that can actually create a feeling of untrust or distrust. Like, what am I looking at? Did this actually get produced, or is this something that the person did on their own? So I think just like really labeling that really clearly is great. I would lead with this work that's produced, even if it's not your favorite work or you think it's not the shiniest and brightest, but I would lead with that because that's always going to have the most weight. I think it's also just like, just finding as many opportunities as you can just to get some more work to put together in your portfolio. So maybe that's assisting with like some more senior seasoned people that are already on projects. Like, hey, can I help out and be an extra set of hands? I'd love to put this work in my portfolio. Or, going to networking events, like just being a part of the community and finding those people to then volunteer your time, whether it's paid or unpaid. If you want to do it on spec just to build your book, that might be an option. And then also, I think doing stuff on spec, like meaning that's your own personal project. Like, I'm seeing this like, Walmart purchase path that I think could be improved. And I'm going to take it upon myself to like design it differently. And here's why. So obviously you're not doing the research. You don't have the data. It's not like a real project, but it's showing that like you're in it to win it, and you're thinking through these things, and you're taking the time to like build your portfolio and build your book and just show your design thinking and your interest and your passion for the industry. So I think those can all be, you know, possible ways just to kind of get the leg up at that particular juncture in your career.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I tell people to sort of like walk around your neighborhood maybe and go into some small businesses, see if you can help with their website or online ordering or POS system or just sort of anything maybe, and it's maybe for free, but you never know. I mean, they could pay you $500, $1,000 to sort of help with the flow that they're struggling with. I mean, that also shows initiative and other skills too. So it's definitely really tough. Like we feel for the sort of new grads for sure. It's hopefully it'll change, but there's definitely like people that you can ask. I really like what Joanne said about, hey, can I just sort of like be in these meetings maybe, or just learn a little bit or from you.
I love that idea of just walking around. That's so like 1950s.
It's so old school.
I love it. It's so old school. But sometimes that's what gets the job done, you know?
Yeah.
That's what you used to do, didn't you, Joanne, in the 50s?
That's what I did in the 50s when I was, you know, negative whatever years old.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Okay, I'm the sage out of the three of us. That's fine. I can take on that.
Someone can redesign something from the 50s today.
There you go.
What would that be?
Yeah.
Pre-internet. Okay, cool. Well, this has all been super handy stuff. I think it would be cool. So our biggest takeaways would on this interview process stuff and common things of feedback that we've heard is being prepared, timing yourself, staying on point, being succinct in what you're delivering and what you're going through, being able to go deeper. Sorry?
Great question.
Oh, okay.
The take-home design exercise, the dreaded take-home exercise.
Oh, can we address this? I don't feel like we have enough time in this one, but I'm having daily existential crises on this stuff. It's killing my soul. It really is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've heard so many bad behavior stories in this industry. Like one of my favorite super high-level VPs of design, incredible company background, was asked, and these, you know, he's thankfully landed someplace right now, but in his interview process, he was being asked to take home design tests unpaid on the company's brand, no less, which is like so bad.
48 hours, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I don't know. At a certain point, if you're a designer and do you really want to do it? I don't know. Like, I guess I discourage. I just don't think it helps with the hiring process. I don't think it's the way to do it. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah. You can negotiate though. You can ask for compensation, especially if it's on their brand. So you can absolutely ask for compensation. I've seen companies offer like, you know, $500 just as like, you know, a standard, but you can go up or down depending on how you feel about it. Or you can push back and just say, you know, be nice and, you know, sweet and diplomatic to them and be like, hey, like, I think this would actually serve you better.
Yeah.
If I did like a really in-depth like case study or portfolio review or like really diving into
an
one
alternative
piece of like something that you've already done. And you can judge the presentation. Like you could put a snazzy title slide on it that's got the company logo on it. You can make it really personalized for them. Like you can do some judging and like make it, you know, extra sparkly. But I think that's tends to be the standard of most companies that we work with, is to do away with the design test and do that instead. Sometimes like a live whiteboarding thing. Some companies like that, some companies don't. Some candidates really like that too. It's like, oh, okay, I kind of get to see how I'm going to work with these people and what our work styles are like. So that could be valuable.
I don't know. Yeah, look, ultimately the answer to the question, is there a red flag? Yes, it is.
Definitely.
We should all be saying no. We should all be pushing back on it. I push back on it every other day when it gets, you know, presented to me from companies that want to work with me, and I have to do my best to absolutely educate. I walk away from money a lot. I walk away from an income that I'm trying to make for myself to pay my rent, to live in a country that I need a work visa on. I have to walk away from that constantly because I'm faced with this stuff. So I'm doing my best to combat, if you will, this as well, to re-educate, to put forward alternatives, as you've discussed. And I do that every other day on behalf of all the designers that I work with. But please let it be known that I can do my best to do that all day long, and all of us can. And there will always and still be companies that do not get it, that do not care, that do not want to listen. And they will say, this is what we want. This is the way that we're going to hire someone. This is the only way that we know how to do it. And we're doing it. We don't care what you say.
What does that say about the company, right?
Well, precisely.
Yeah. Right. And then how they treat design. Like, how do they value design, and do they even know how to interview for design?
Totally. So we all got to try and walk away from it, hopefully.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would love for that part of the process to be like a reference call instead of somebody that you've worked with. You know, if you can queue up your references, and sort of they can maybe say like, hey, listen, like Kyle really knows his shit. Like, he can do this. Or this is what he sort of brought to the team and created, versus a design challenge. And that's really when you push back and say, like, what exactly from my current portfolio are you missing that you need in a design challenge?
I'm more, and you know, we could spend an hour on this for sure. More.
Yeah, I know. I was on a panel at NASDAQ some years ago, and this was brought up. There's like maybe 75 designers in the audience, and the topic was brought up of like take-home design tests, and it was like 75 people hissing at the same time. It was just like, no.
It's such a loud thing, yet people just still seem to opt for it. So I'm more than happy to like spend a whole episode. I'm just keeping an eye on the time myself right now. And because I want to leave time for us to talk about some positive things this week. And I feel like this is a bit of a negative topic. So, but we should discuss it, and we should go into it, and we should spend maybe next week's or another live stream on it, and empower each other to find alternatives, to offer alternatives to these companies, to empower each other to diamond hands and walk away from it. Because it's not really it just shouldn't be a practice that exists.
Well, I think, you know, to find the positivity in it, I think it's just like remembering your worth, like recognizing your worth and realizing that you don't have to do that. It might feel like you do in these trying times, but I think, you know, this is my California woo-woo coming out. But I think that if we show the universe, or even yourself, if you don't want to get woo-woo, showing somebody that you're open to doing this kind of thing, then that's what you're going to get more of, right? That's going to show up for you more and more. But if you're like, hey, I've got my standards, I have a certain way that I want to treat myself and the way that I want to run my interview process, then you're making room and space for the things that will fit. And that's what you're going for.
I've got clients that are asking me for this right now, and it's really tough because I really like some of them, and it's like, guys, please stop. Don't do this. All right, wins for the week. Positivity. Sharing some success stories or exciting things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. Trying to think of them, trying to share some of these exciting things. Anything come to mind for you guys? Anything? It's like so hard to think of something positive.
Well, this is sort of a personal thing, but kind of a work thing too. But I had my sister and her family come visit me in my upstate house here last week. And I think just taking the foot off of the gas of like work for 3 days actually just kind of created these nice openings. Like I was getting these emails that were like full of good news, and just, I think it was just good to take the foot off the gas and like not watch the kettle boil, as they say, and just kind of let things flow. So I think that was just like a good reminder to myself of like, oh, enjoying your life and having balance is really important during these times too.
Yep. I love to hear that. Anything come to mind for you, Erica? Anything you've seen out there in the...
Yeah, here's my shameless plug. I have been doing a lot of work with clients on their resumes.
Yep.
So I don't know if people remember this or have been here for all 3 of our sessions, but if you're looking for more eyes, like specifically on your work portfolio review or resume refresh, or even LinkedIn, I had a great session last night with someone who never really filled out their LinkedIn, didn't really know how to like connect to someone and then message them and then email them in the order and how to say something, whether it was about like a specific role that she applied for. But I've been having really fun conversations, and like afterwards, everyone's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I'm not just saying that because I really do want their feedback. But so far it's been pretty positive. So that, I do that nights and weekends. So I'm always working. I have no life.
I love that. But it is helpful and it is impactful and it can make a difference in many people's search, I think, directly. Even as recruiters, maybe we can't get someone the job, but we can certainly give them some tools that might help them get that job themselves at times.
Nice because I'm a recruiter sort of reviewing your resume, and you can see kind of like how a hiring manager would be looking at your resume, which I think is pretty valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are the opinion of every hiring manager we've ever worked with, it's kind of along those lines, I think. Positive on my side. I mean, market focused, it's certainly been a challenging time still. I think this year just can't figure out what it's doing. I feel like we felt like things were quite busy at the start of the year, and now it feels like they're a little bit more challenging or quieter for designers. So it just feels like things haven't shifted too much yet. But I have, I guess, been working on some good stuff this week, in particular some really high-level IC roles, which just for me personally is a really fun joy to see a company want a Series B at that, to spend, mid 200s on an IC product designer and beyond, even higher, which is a big salary, a big expectation at that number. That's, you really need to be a top performer at that. But companies wanting to invest in that type of designer, putting money behind that type of designer, and seeing that track, that IC track, that, being rewarded for your craft skills. Some of that is really fun for me to work on, work-wise specific, market-wise specific. So that has been a joy. Looking at some of the best pieces of work I've seen in a long time, which is awesome. Whether it's a website portfolio or just even a Figma deck at times, I'm like, this shit is good, which is cool.
That's nice. Love that. That's great.
Yeah. Oh. Well, look, thanks everyone. Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, Erica.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really appreciate getting to spend this time with you. Hopefully we should just do one of these in person soon enough as well. We all
know. We should. We're all yeah, we can meet midnight.
Right, yeah. Bring him. We'll get him a mic.
Very well heard. Yes.
Him and I can have a 4-year-old conversation. Thanks as always. This will go on YouTube. You can watch it later. We are going to come back ideally in 2 weeks and talk about more things. Hit us with topics because we love that.
Yeah.
These live questions are so helpful. Topics about what you want to hear about. Follow us or connect with us if you aren't already, and you'll see us ask about topics or things like that. You can DM us anytime. You're here on LinkedIn. If you're not connected with us, please do. Hit us with the kinds of things that you want to discuss. And this hour is for you. This time is for you, the designers out there looking. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. If you guys want to connect with me, you guys need my email, which is joanne@joanneweavergroup.com.
Nice.
I can keep my invite box nice and clean and tidy.
I love it. Well done.
But definitely connect with us for sure.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Have an amazing week or two. We'll see you soon. Bye. Cheers.
Bye.